welcome to the 5th episode of the Wokeish podcast. This is Ebony.
And this is Zelma.
Thanks so much for listening. This week we're going to actually be talking about something a little bit more lighthearted than what we have been talking about for the last 4 episodes. So we'll be discussing the kind of internal conflict of being woke and how you kind of navigate who you support in terms of celebrity and all of those things when they may have potentially done something kind of problematic in the past. But before we get there, we're going to start out with our shout-out segment.
Yes, and so this week I wanted to shout out Vallarta Supermarkets, and it's a supermarket chain in California who announced on Tuesday a $110,000 donation to Latinos in higher education. And why I wanted to shout them out, it's because to me it's an example of what happens when organizations step up in the absence of support from government. And so recently the Trump administration has just been kind of attacking Latinos, specifically the immigrant Latino community. And so Vallarta Supermarket released a statement saying that they were donating this money to Latinos in higher education because they have immigrant roots for their supermarkets, and so they wanted to extend and help other immigrant Latinos. And so I just thought it was really awesome that they were stepping up and giving back to the community in a time where I feel like we need it the most, and not from an expected source, from a non-political organization, just a supermarket. And I thought it was really awesome that they're trying to not only help the community, but saying specifically help our customers, because it's a chain that kind of seeks to help out the Latino community. And so wanted to bring something positive that's happening where people are stepping up to give back.
And second on the list of shout-outs, we kind of wanted to just give a quick acknowledgement to Van Lathan. And so Van works for TMZ. He also, if you've seen the TMZ interview of Kanye circulating, he's the person that kind of stood up and said, I think that what you're doing is actually the absence of thought. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Van because I think that there are far too few people who have been publicly checking Kanye. So I think it's perfectly fine to talk to him behind closed doors and, do it in kind of a way that's, quote unquote appropriate. But I think that what Van did might have actually been a help to Kanye and to his fans to kind of reassure them that somebody is talking to him. I mean, it definitely reassured me, seeing that. And then apparently there was like a second part to that video that was released that I hadn't really seen circulating, but Kanye actually made a lot more sense in this second video. Yeah. And so I appreciated Van kind of approaching him in that way and, talking about his fans, talking about the people that have supported him throughout his career and how this makes them feel, how he, kind of like we discussed last week, Kanye is in a position where he doesn't have to deal with the potential repercussions of his actions, but all of us regular folks will.
Yeah.
So, yes, thanks to Van.
Yeah.
And that concludes our shout-out segment. Now we're going to move on to our In the Know segment. So now we're moving on to our In the Know segment.
Yes. And so I wanted to start this segment off just because, this week is Cinco de Mayo. I'm going to expand on this conversation in a little bit, but last weekend, Trump had another rally, and in this rally, he asked, are there any Hispanics in the room? But it was there were no Hispanics. It was silent. And then people actually started booing. And so I think, Trump is really good at feeding or reacting to what the crowd is giving him. And so...
Wait, they were booing because there weren't any Hispanics?
No, they were booing because he mentioned Hispanics.
Wow.
The white people, yeah.
Wow.
And so, of course, after there was a lot of booing, he went on and started talking about his wall and about immigration and saying that all these people pouring across the border are going to vote Democrat, which isn't true because you can't vote unless you're a citizen. So they wouldn't even be able to vote if they cross the border. But just the fact...
I don't understand. They've been saying that about DACA recipients, too.
I know, yeah.
It's you don't know how this works, clearly. You don't even know how your, I don't know. You don't know how your political system works. You don't know who has the capacity to vote and who
Yeah, and so then he threatened to close down the country if he doesn't get funding for his wall. But why I wanted to bring it up is because I actually saw this really funny commentary on it by a Latina. She is a writer for Seth Meyers in his talk show at night. And she was saying that it's kind of what Trump was doing is like what people do when they want to talk shit about someone, when they're like, okay, is Susie in the room? No? Okay, let's go. And so it's just kind of frustrating that he always talks about Hispanic unemployment and Black unemployment and look at how much he's done, but then goes around and says, which I call like race baiting and trying to divide people. Like people say it's not Trump that's dividing people, it's the minorities themselves bringing up race. But when you start a question by saying, are there any whatever in the room? Like to me, that never, like I don't get a good feeling from that. It's not like, and he didn't follow that up with anything positive. And so I just wanted to start that in our conversation and just to remind people, and especially not just people, but particularly Latinos who support Trump, because there are, I was reading an article about how Trump went to Florida and is trying to get the Cuban and Venezuelan vote because Cuba and people from Cuba and Venezuela are coming from a context where government has not been a good thing. And so people from those countries want less government and people who support Trump want less government. And so Trump was kind of trying to get support from that population. And a lot of that population was responding and kind of making it seem like there are Hispanics who support Trump. And as we know, people from Cuba and Venezuela sometimes, look differently, can pass as white more often than people who aren't. Not saying that there aren't Cubans and Venezuelans who are darker complected, but there has been a history of Latinos who can pass for white or Latinos who are more light complected being able to have different experiences in this country. And I feel that that's exactly what Trump is trying to do. He's just trying to get, with Kanye, he's just trying to get anyone that's not white in his corner so that he and other people like him can use that against that group. And so just wanted to start this conversation in this week of Cinco de Mayo by saying that Trump is not here for Latinos. Trump is just trying to divide the Latino vote, and he's trying to make it seem that he is here for that group. And we have to be smarter, and we have to be aware, and we have to call out not only Trump, but other Latinos who are letting him do this. And it's not okay. It's not going to work. And we have to make sure that we open our eyes and don't let him use my people, specifically Latinos, to garner any type of support.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect transition to what we're going to be discussing for In the Know this week, because that a lot of those folks are going to be celebrating Cinco de Mayo. They're going to be, so they can boo at the mention of, Hispanics and then go out to the bar and bar crawl for first of all, an American holiday, but
Yeah. So I'm Mexican. I'm actually from Mexico. And I wanted to, we're going to talk about cultural appropriation. Yeah. And I think in a little bit, we're going to really break it down as to what we mean by cultural appropriation. But I wanted just to give an example because it's happening this week. And as Ebony was saying, Cinco de Mayo is not Mexicans' independence. It is actually a holiday that is more commercialized in the United States than it is in Mexico. And I feel that people who aren't Mexican and who voted for Trump, who are anti-immigration, who feel that Mexicans are not or shouldn't be here, who feel that Mexicans are rapists and criminals and here to take jobs, if you support that and celebrate Cinco de Mayo, then you are appropriating my culture. I think I actually read this quote that says, if you voted for Trump and you're trying to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, you better Cinco de mind your fucking business and leave Mexican culture alone. And I just, as a Mexican who, I don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo because it's not Mexicans' independence. I celebrate Mexicans' independence on September 16th, but I just feel that if you don't appreciate the culture and are actively voting and doing things to keep people from that culture and that country from being in your country, but want to pick and choose some aspects of their country to just temporarily use for your benefit, that is not good. That is bad. And so if you are someone that does not support immigration, if you are someone that voted for Trump, if you are someone that has been silent when Trump has said anti-Mexican things, specifically Mexican because it's Cinco de Mayo, then you should not be, one, celebrating Cinco de Mayo, and two, relying on stereotypes about Mexicans in your celebration of Cinco de Mayo. And so I'm going to hand it off to Ebony so we can kind of talk about what cultural appropriation is and then extend this conversation a little further.
Yeah. But I mean, even before that, like, I think that not only should you not celebrate Cinco de Mayo, but you shouldn't even want to, given your political ideology. How is it that you can boo Hispanics 1 minute and then be drinking to celebrate what isn't even their Independence Day the next? It just doesn't make any sense. And so I mean, I guess there are going to be plenty of memes circulating about this, but another note is that you shouldn't be wearing Mexican attire if you're not Mexican. That includes sombreros, ponchos, fake mustaches, accents, etc. And we have all seen these memes that circulate after Cinco de Mayo where people are dressed up, people are, just kind of being real extra. And it's like, you don't know anything about this culture, nor do you care about this culture.
Yeah.
You don't like the people, so why is it that you are taking it upon yourself to celebrate this fake holiday?
Yeah, Mexicans are more than just white people's guesses and assumptions about what being Mexican is. Yeah. No, in Mexico we don't wear ponchos. No, in Mexico we don't all have accents like the really exaggerated accents that people portray. No, we don't all have those really long mustaches. No, we don't have sombreros. Like, that's just parts of Mexican history that people have taken to really just say that this is what Mexican culture is. And it's not only offensive that people sum up Mexican culture to margaritas, tacos, and sombreros, but it's hypocritical for someone to not want that culture in your space, but want to get drunk and celebrate it for a couple of hours once a year. And so it's something that I have a beef with every year when Cinco de Mayo comes around. And in this year in particular for people who are Trump supporters and people who actively voted against and support policies that hurt people from this country and say things that hurt people from this country and are offensive. And it's just a huge no-no. And if I see this year is like, I'm at that point where I'm not going to hold, if I walk by and I see like people having these Cinco de Mayo parties, I mean, if you're okay making fun of my culture in my face like that, then I'm going to be okay telling you that you're an idiot.
You out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's basically how it goes. And then the funny thing is that folks that do this are always so like shocked and taken aback. How is that offensive?
Yeah.
It's just this. It's just that. I didn't mean anything.
It's just a party.
I think it's fun. I think it's, lighten up. Oh, this. Oh, that. It's hilarious to me that people can tell you how to feel about your culture when it's convenient for them. When they want to use it in an exploitative way. Or a mocking way. But I guess before I go into, a whole bunch of detail about what cultural appropriation is, and before Zelma and I kind of talk about maybe, I don't know how we talk about it, but just how our personal feelings about it, what's okay, what isn't okay, who's it okay for, who isn't it okay for, because I think there's a lot of variation in terms of, as far as that's concerned. I wanted to kind of talk about the situation that, that I think kind of emerged in this past week or so, given that it's prom season, and that's what kind of sparked my interest in I think we should have a discussion about this, because I don't feel like I don't think that there has been any consensus about what it is, why it's wrong, who it's wrong for. But yeah, so I came across this post actually on Facebook, and someone who I know who is Chinese posted this and was kind of and he's Chinese American. He said that he didn't have a problem with it, but he wanted to know from his Facebook friends what they think and like if this is a problem. So there's this white girl who wore a traditional Chinese dress to prom, and she got dragged on Twitter, like dragged by Asian Americans generally, like more broadly. So there were people that were saying, I'm not Japanese, I'm not Chinese, I'm Japanese, but I find this offensive, or I'm not Chinese, I'm Korean, and I wouldn't even wear this dress even though I'm Asian. And I think that another thing that was particularly offensive to people was the pose that she did. So she did kind of like this like prayer hands pose with her group of friends. And I think that more so than the dress, it was the fact that she was also using this kind of like religious symbolism, but incorrectly. And so I guess basically what I gathered from the tweets was that the hand motion or the pose doesn't match the dress. So it's like kind of taken from two different cultures, essentially. And so, people were upset because they felt like it was, making a mockery of their culture, not really understanding it, not having a genuine interest in understanding it, but just kind of wearing a dress because it's pretty, which is something that I think that, I could tell based on the way that she was responding to the tweets that she didn't really understand.
Yeah.
Or didn't want to understand. Like, maybe she understood, but didn't think it was that serious. Didn't think that people should be upset about it. Like, she said several times that, like, oh, it's just a dress. It's just this. It's just that. And, yeah, so I kind of wanted to build on that with a discussion about what cultural appropriation actually is. I just wanted to have kind of a discussion based on that and kind of wondering what you think about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way when people have Mexican themed parties and they wear the Mexican dresses, or I actually have been conflicted because people I've recently been following people who identify as indigenous from Mexico, kind of saying that Frida Kahlo was a person who was committing cultural appropriation by that she is not indigenous, that she was kind of a quote unquote white Latina, because Latina, some people consider Latino or Mexican a nationality, and then Latino is like an ethnicity. And so saying that because she was an indigenous and kind of profiting off of the indigenous culture, that she was actually committing cultural appropriation. So you can still be from that, like even in this specific case, someone from that country, but not from that group. And if you profit off of it, if you use it selectively for your own benefit, but don't give any of that money back to indigenous people or don't go back to the indigenous community. And so they were kind of saying like all her artwork, all her even right now currently her museum, none of the proceeds go to the indigenous community. None of the proceeds go to support or rectify any of the issues that Mexico as a country has committed against this indigenous group. So I feel I understand people being upset about her wearing the clothing for prom, because I think if you really aren't educated about the culture that you're drawing from and only using it to make yourself like fashionable or pretty or temporarily, or using it as a costume, I think that that's offensive, because a lot of people don't like the fact that it's overlooking the like really negative experiences that people from that ethnicity, people from that country, people from that demographic, people from that group experience. And so for a person of privilege, in this case a white woman, to wear a outfit that is from like Chinese culture, or a person of privilege like Frida Kahlo, who is not indigenous, to put on the indigenous clothing as a costume. Well, people are saying, I don't know where I lie with that in that debate. I'm still kind of in between. But I can see that point of view, and I can see that because I feel that as a Mexican who is in Texas, where we're really close to the Mexican border, and there are just so many Mexican themes, and what they draw on are the traditional, like piñatas, sombreros, margaritas, tacos that aren't tacos. Like, there's more to being Mexican than the things that people cling to for their parties. And I don't know, it does personally bug me, and it irks me, and especially if there are no Mexican people. Like, if it's a Mexican themed party and it's all white people and they rely on these stereotypes about what they think that being Mexican is, and don't acknowledge or see that there's an issue with that, I have an issue with that, and I think it's problematic. And so, I don't know, I feel, and sometimes it's just a feeling, but it's really hard to know, because a lot of people tell me, well, can't I just appreciate your culture? And I've had this conversation with someone who was like, I think, you're going too far by being mad that people were having this Mexican theme, because it's, they're trying to incorporate different people and different culture in their party. So why is that wrong?
Yeah. I think, so, okay, I guess before I give my opinion, I'm going to read this little bit that I wrote to kind of explain what cultural appropriation is, or at least this is my view on what it is. Yeah. So some people might disagree, but so I think that cultural appropriation is an inherently Western concept because of the history of imperialism and exploitation and contemporary racism and prejudice toward non-whites. Some groups are more averse to cultural appropriation than others, and I think that all boils down to, 1, how much taunting and abuse your group has had to endure from whites over time. 2, how much social distance there is between your group and the white mainstream now. And ultimately, that measure equates to how protective you are of your culture's symbols. To be stereotyped and ridiculed for your culture one day and see white folks flippantly wearing your traditional clothing, hairstyles, etc. is kind of irritating, especially when it isn't even acknowledged and when that thing is co-opted and renamed. So I have here in parentheses, for example, when Kim Kardashian wore her hair in cornrows and then called it Bo Derek braids. Like, no, Kim, they're cornrows.
Who Bo Derek is a white woman.
Bo Derek is a white woman?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know who Bo Derek is.
I had to look it up, and it said that she was a white woman who did that style.
That is hilarious to me, because it's like, Kim, you're married to a black man also, who probably, well, I don't know what Kanye is on these days, but probably could have told her that these are called cornrows. So the issue that folks had with Kim Kardashian at the time wasn't with her wearing her hair braided, but with her lack of acknowledgement and attempt to rename a hairstyle that has pervaded black culture forever. The reality of imperialism has become repackaged as a more palatable cultural appropriation, whereby white folks take things and call it their own, not land and resources this time, but culture and symbols. And so with that kind of description, I have a hard time with cultural appropriation. And I think that it's because, well, 1, I'm from Southern California, which is maybe 60-65% Mexican. And there are things that I grew up kind of doing, things that I grew up kind of that my family grew up doing that I didn't know when I was younger, at least, that, oh, this is a part of Mexican culture, I mean, but also, like, parts of my family are Mexican, so maybe that is how it kind of got, integrated in. I'm not actually sure. Like, these were things that they were doing before I was born. But, like, for instance, at every child's birthday party, we had a piñata. Like, that was the thing. I don't know, what else? I mean, the food that we eat, I would say maybe 50-60% of the foods that my dad cooked growing up, or that, like, my uncles cook, or, like, barbecue and stuff like that, was Mexican. And so I think that growing up in Southern California, like, it's so much a part of Californian culture or LA culture that it's hard to even, after a while, it's hard to tease out what it means to be from LA and how much of that comes from Mexican culture. Like, I mean, some of my favorite things about LA are Mexican. Like, I mean, and it's not even something that I kind of put a lot of thought into. Like, tacos are my favorite food. Like, I mean, arroz con leche is my favorite dessert.
Yeah.
You know, like so I mean it's hard to it's hard to pin down, and then I think when I dig a little bit deeper into who it is that I see as being the most problematic when it comes to cultural appropriation and why it is that we have such a hard time with it, and by we I mean like non-white groups, I think that it is, I'm speaking for myself, I am most offended when I see white folks doing things that are black. And not because it's like, oh, this is mine, but because that often comes with, you know, oh, this isn't black culture. Oh, that's not black. Hip hop is not black. You know, other people do this and that. These braids, this hairstyle, this isn't black culture. This word, these words, this language, this way of speaking, this style of dress, etc., 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 isn't black. And it's, you know, I think that is, like I said earlier, kind of a repackaged and watered down imperialistic view. You know, and I don't think that I think that there's kind of a common thread among non-white folks who kind of care about these issues, that we don't do that to one another. You know, so I would never be like, oh yeah, I'm eating these tacos, but then rename it like, I don't know, meat and bread. I don't know, just, you know, like not taking it away from the culture in which it originated. And so I think that might be one of the biggest issues one of the things that to me characterizes cultural appropriation. It's kind of a lack of acknowledgement, a lack of appreciation, and kind of, you know, maybe potentially trying to repackage some things, or even making a mockery of it. You know, like when I was in college, I think it was UC Davis. I'm not sure. I think it was UC Davis, and I remember one year they had a black themed Halloween party, where like people dressed up as, you know, black people. And it was like, and so it's always an issue around Halloween because blackface is something that's so just, there's no way around it. Like, that's racist. It was based in a racist ideology. So you can't take the power out of that. Nobody can take, like, there's no taking the power back. Just leave that alone. Leave that in the era where it began. Do not bring that to, you know, to today. So people that want to dress up as like Nicki Minaj, I see that as a really common Halloween costume. Fine, dress up as Nicki Minaj. Does that mean that you then paint your skin brown? No. You don't get to do that. Yeah. And so I think that even though so many people know that that's problematic and they continue to do it, is what I have an issue with. Like, you can dress up as Nicki Minaj, but where you have to draw the line is painting your skin brown. Like, you don't get to do that. And I think, and so it's not like, I think that one of the things that young white kids have the hardest time with, like, you know, especially like coming off of Coachella, there was so much discussion about that, about how people kind of go out there dressed in what they think is like indigenous or Native American garb, and that's the like fashionable thing. I think that a lot of white kids feel like, oh, well, I don't get to do anything. Like, why don't we get to do anything? Everybody else gets to have all the fun. Like, why are we the ones that don't get to dress up like this? Or we don't get to say the N-word, but everybody else does. It's like, the thing is that white kids are so privileged that they don't even recognize how much they have. Yeah. So they look at, and then also they're so privileged that they feel like everything should belong to them, that they should be able to access everything. So there shouldn't be a thing, like for instance the N-word, that they don't have access to. Yeah. And that is privilege. There are some things that you just don't get to do. And then that's just what it is. Yeah. I have like two main issues. And one is when white people say, but I don't have a culture. So that's why I like to take from or inspire from all these things. And I'm like, us. We had to create one. I'm just like, what do we learn in U.S. history?
what, like, everything is white culture. Like, it's so, like, white culture is so pervasive. It's not even white culture, it's just culture.
Yeah.
It's just America.
Pop culture.
America is white culture.
Yes.
And when I mean America, I mean, like, mainstream America. And so, and then my second issue is, what bothers me is, like, there are different, because of your positionality, there are different consequences to people who do the same thing. So when white people wear cornrows, it's fashionable and they're on Vogue. But when black people wear cornrows, they get written up.
It's ghetto.
They get written up and said that's not professional. And then particularly one example I bring up for Latinos is, like, the Cholo style. And then, you know, Lana Del Rey, Madonna, Gwen Stefani, all these white women who have dressed Cholo in order to do, like, these music videos without really recognizing that what Cholo style comes from. And Cholo style came from a challenge to white assimilation, where in the 1920s and 1930s there was, like, mass deportation of Mexicans in the United States to Mexico. And not only just Mexicans, but, like, U.S. citizens of Mexican heritage were forcibly removed from this country in order to go back to Mexico in the 1920s and 30s. And they wore Cholo style as a form of saying, like, well, fuck that. If I'm gonna be ostracized and if I'm gonna be physically removed, then the way that I can rebel is through my clothes. And so when white people wear the Cholo style without it, to me, it's just kind of like, your people literally forced my people to leave this country, and still to this day are forcing my people to leave this country. And when you wear Cholo style, it's a music video. But when Mexicans wear Cholo style, they're gangsters, they're criminals, and they should be deported. And so I think that white people who complain about, why can't I do this, why can't I do that, should learn, educate themselves about their own culture and their own history. And once they read what their group of people have done, they would understand why that particular group is offended. And so for me as a Mexican, when I see white people clinging to certain aspects of Mexico while at the same time supporting, and it's not all white people, but we know the majority of white women voted for Trump, and, like, the majority, it wasn't the black people who voted for Trump. It was, it was a certain type of, his base looks a certain type of way. Yeah. And so,
which is why he can at a rally say, are there any Hispanics in here?
Yeah. And so I think that it's not, if you don't understand, then you're not educated. And maybe
you don't want to be educated.
Yeah. And maybe you should go and look at the history. And if you're saying that I don't have a culture, then maybe you should stop and think that your culture is so pervasive that it's the default. Like, it's not even, it doesn't have to be specified. We learn about your culture. I learned more about American history and what white people have done than I have about, I had to go on my own to learn about the mass deportation of Mexicans in the 1920s and 30s. This was not something I learned even in freaking Texas where it happened. We didn't learn that in class. I had to go out of my way to learn that. So I just think that you really have to educate yourself, because we're educated about your history and we're educated about your culture. And so if you don't understand, then, like Ebony said, maybe you just don't want to, and you just want everything. You want to be the dominant culture and to be able to pick and choose aspects of other people's cultures, when for some people that's all we have. For many Mexicans, all we have to cling for, all we have that is ours, is our culture. And to take that from us too is kind of like a slap in the face, a further slap in the face.
Yeah. Especially when, like, I don't know if this is the case for you, but growing up and recognizing that parts of your culture don't align with mainstream white culture, and kind of feeling different, feeling less than, people potentially telling you that you're less than or that you're different, making fun of the way that, your people talk or the way that your people do different things, but then cherry picking other things from your culture that they like, and so I know that summer is upon us, and I know that a lot of folks are going to go tan crazy. A lot of folks are about to sit out in the sun. Do not tell your brown friends that you wish that your skin was darker, that you can't wait to tan so that you can have some color, that you're so pale, that you're so this, that you're so that. They don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't care. This is skin that they have to live in, that they maybe didn't always love, that the world didn't train them to love. The world didn't tell them that their skin was beautiful. And yet, in your 20-somethings, you realized that you wanted your skin to be darker, and now it's cool. Now it's in vogue. Now it's all the rage to have darker skin. No, just stop. If you want to tan, go tan, but you do not need to talk to me or your other brown friends about it. You don't need to, boast and wish and ha. No. I had seen this other meme that I thought was super interesting, and I think I posted it on the page, that says, white person cooks ethnic food. Immigrant generation. Oh, that's nice. They like our culture. First generation. Die 1,000 deaths, colonist scum.
Yeah.
A colonialist scum. And I think there's some truth to that. Because there are a ton of things that my parents, my grandparents would not care about one way or another, wouldn't be affected by.
Yeah.
But I am outraged by, or maybe outrage is too strong a word, but just like, how can they do that and not I don't know. So I think that I don't think that there's anything wrong with being sensitive. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's anything wrong with being like quote unquote woke. But I wonder how many fights or how many battles we can actually stand, and like what is the actual fight that we should be. Ultimately we're trying to fight for like equal rights, and particularly equal rights under the law. I think that cultural appropriation is kind of a derivative of that, but it's at the bottom. It's at the bottom in terms of things that are actually concerning. I think that it's a symptom of, I really don't care about you and your culture. I don't care to learn it. I just think that y'all have pretty stuff. But is it harming us? I don't know. I really don't know. I could see how it could potentially harm us, because it probably goes hand in hand with a lot of other things. Like people that are like, F that, cultural appropriation isn't a real thing, are probably people that also have a ton of other really bad traits in common.
Yeah. I mean, because, my sister, she's marrying an Indian person, and so for her engagement party, I wore a sari.
Yeah. And you felt some way about that?
No. The reason, and it was like white people wearing saris, I was wearing sari. And the reason, it's because like we actually had an Indian person come and tell us, like we went to an Indian person, we got him done at her store, she wrapped us and explained to us, like it was it was learning, and not just like taking pictures and posting on Instagram. Like it was learning and out of respect, because traditionally like everyone wears a sari. And so I wanted to be respectful, and instead of wearing American style clothes, I wanted, and even for bridesmaids, we're going to wear saris. And it's out of respect, because that is what Indian people wear at weddings. So and I think also like the context. I think that if there wasn't a travel ban, if there wasn't policies, if there wasn't, policies that limit visas from Mexico, that limit visas from Iran, that limit visas from China, that limit, if Trump wasn't saying these horrible things about China, about China's the devil, China's trying to teach, then I think that I can understand more people saying like, well, I think this dress is cute, I want to wear it, I'm not offensive, I'm not problematic. I don't know, but it's hard. It really is hard, because it depends on so many things.
Yeah, I feel like, because can woke white folks wear other cultures' things?
I think like if there's someone from that culture in that situation, then yeah. If you're going with your Indian friends, if you borrowed your Indian friend's sari, if she's telling you like, this is how you wear it, like this is mine, like this is what you do, like if it's not a Halloween costume, if it's really for like, what's the purpose of you wearing that? Is it just because you're going to a costume party, or is it because you're going to a wedding, or is it because you're going to someone's quince? Is it because you're doing all this? Then that's okay. It's totally okay, I think, to learn from a culture and to appreciate it. But I think those situations to me are easier to say like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it's just like white people going to Coachella and wearing indigenous outfits, even though they're woke, then I think that that's not okay, because there is no people from that culture being represented, and it's just once again just like the exclusion of that community and the picking of certain things. Right. And then, you know, are you wearing it in an offensive way? That girl was offensive because she was doing the praying hands. Yeah. Coachella is offensive because people wear really revealing outfits with little Indian headdresses or indigenous headdresses. It's offensive when you wear ponchos with a little mustache and that's all you wear. So it's also like the way that you're displaying yourself also, for me, will impact whether I think that what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's that because I think that if you are, like, I do feel a little bit, a tinge of, like, irritation when I see, I guess recently I have seen a lot more non-black people wearing, like, braids and stuff with, like, extensions and things like that to me, like, it makes me feel a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. And it's also, while I think that if you are woke, it would be okay, I don't think that anybody that is or has an awareness or a sensitivity to those kinds of things would want to do it.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit hard. Like, I remember one of my friends, she was asking me, I think she had bought a head wrap, so kind of like an African head wrap, or maybe it was given to her, and she was asking me, like, if it's offensive for her to wear it. And me knowing her, I was like, no, like, she is hella down, hella down. Probably will have black kids one day. And so I was like, no, but she still felt uncomfortable, and that was something that I understood. But at the same time, if she were out on the street or something like that and someone who didn't know her saw that and was offended by that, would they be wrong?
No, I mean, I think that's just what you get. Like, every group has had its hit. Like, there's so much privilege with white that I just don't feel bad for white people being like, but I can't wear my dress. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's what you get. Yeah. Like, you don't ever get to do that. I'm sorry, that sucks for you. You don't get to look really exotic. You don't get to do this. You don't get to do that. But guess what? Like, you still get paid the highest. You still get the most respect. You still get the longest mortality. You still get, like, everything. Like, you still have all these things. And so to not be able to look a certain way, it's like, that's the only one of the few downsides that there is to being white. So you don't get everything. You don't get to have everything.
That's that privilege. Privilege. Because I mean, even thinking about different clothing stores, like, say, Forever 21 or something like that, and then they have their, like, quote-unquote tribal print, and so I don't know, it just, cultures are, I don't know, because even now African print is, like, super popular on and so I'm wondering, like, if you are someone that didn't go to, say, an actual seamstress or something like that, or African fabric store, and buy legitimate Ankara print, but then you buy it from Forever 21, is that wrong? Like, or if you buy the shirt from Forever 21 because you liked the combination of colors, but you didn't actually know that it was something that was, co-opted from African culture, is that bad? Or if you didn't know that this shirt, I mean, it says tribal print, but if you did, which is so problematic, but if you wear that shirt and you didn't know that it was co-opted from indigenous culture, is that wrong? I guess that's my difficulty with cultural appropriation, is defining what is and isn't acceptable, what is really, really bad and what's just kind of bad, who it's really bad for.
I mean, and it's just also, like, people having more voice, people being able to see things now, like, being able to see on Twitter, like, oh, white people are really doing this, white people are really wearing this. And I mean, if you go to Forever 21, and you think that anything there is authentic, then I don't feel bad. Like,
or if you just think it's like some kind of design that Forever 21 came up with. Like, if you don't know that this was taken from, or, you know, adapted or stolen from this culture.
Yeah.
I think that there are levels to it. Yeah. Obviously, like, all cultural appropriation isn't created equal. Like, I'm definitely going to be more outraged about the black themed Halloween party than I am going to be about, like, the girl wearing her hair in cornrows. But I think it's all about how you kind of go about it. I can't read intention from, you know, the outside, but if I hear you calling your braids Bo Derek braids, then I think that that's a little bit of, like, a slap in the face.
Yeah.
So, you know, or saying that hip-hop culture isn't black. It's like...
Yeah. I mean, I think as time changes, as it's just new conversations that we're going to keep having.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's ever going to be a definite, like, this is cultural appropriation, this isn't. I feel like it's also a result of us just not realizing how heterogeneous, like, groups are. And so, like, there's just so much variation and so much complexity in cultures. But white people and a lot of people, I mean, I say white people because they're the ones that teach, you know, the knowledge came rooted in white ideology. And so that assumption is just like, this is all the same, this is all the same, this is all the same. And so unfortunately, even everyone who learns from that, we're just also that's just what we know. And so, but people are complex, you know.
So but then it's like, how does an outsider know which side to listen to, you know? If, like, say, for instance, I know that Beyonce has used a lot of Nigerian kind of, like, music or beats or whatever in her music, and some people have had a problem with it. Some people don't. You know, Drake has done the same thing. Some people have a problem with it. Some people don't. And so when it comes to cultural appropriation and deciding how I feel about it, say, as an outsider, a person that's not Nigerian, a person that's not Jamaican, they use a lot of Jamaican and, like, Caribbean beats and stuff like that, like dance hall beats. So as a person that is not, when I am embracing that, when I'm celebrating that, is it wrong?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, because I'm all for it. Like, I would never... I think that there's, like, a clear line, for instance, is, like, say, Coachella, right? If you are a person, white or otherwise, who did not support Standing Rock... then you should not be wearing indigenous clothing. Like, it just... I mean, that's very obvious. It's like, you, on the one hand... oppose something that is, I mean, just atrocious, like the way that they were being mistreated, but then you like them enough to wear their clothes, you know? So I would never be in opposition of anybody's rights, you know? And so, but I don't necessarily think that means that all of their, like, cultural symbols are just open to me. I guess we'll wrap up there because I feel like my head is spinning.
It's such a complicated conversation, but that's why we need to have them. And with different voices, so that it's not the same people. Just, you know, the only way we can learn and be challenged is by being more inclusive.
Right. Okay, so that wraps up our In the Know segment. Now we're going to move on to what's being slept on.
So I strongly suggest that you wake the fuck up.
Okay, so now moving on to our What's Being Slept On segment. So for this week, we are talking, where does your loyalty lie?
Yes.
So kind of following, I guess there's been a lot that has happened in these last few weeks. So with Bill Cosby, with R. Kelly, I think his assistant or something like that, his assistant and his manager, who are both women, finally decided to part ways after years. First of all, the fact that they decided to work with him in the first place after that video was released, that sex tape, is kind of ridiculous. So it's like, miss me with quitting now, but whatever. So that happened, and then with Kanye and all of that he has kind of been doing and saying over this past week. So I had seen a lot of, tweets and have heard people saying things like, yeah, but that next Kanye album's still gonna be fire.
Yeah.
Or, hit that next album going platinum, day one. And things like that. So it was like, well, yeah, y'all still gonna support him and buy his music. And so I was like, well, is that okay? Now, there are certain people, obviously, who don't care about this kind of stuff at all.
Yeah.
But for the people that do care, you know, if you do care about this kind of stuff and you consider yourself kind of progressive or conscious or woke or whatever, and you still support artists or celebrities who have done and said problematic things, how do you negotiate that tension? Like, do you feel conflict? Like, do you feel bad helping to line their pockets? I mean, just generally, like, what are your like feelings? So some of the people that I have are Kanye, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, which is definitely a hard one, Chris Brown, Sabrina Claudio, Kim Kardashian, Bill Cosby. I think Kim K and Sabrina Claudio can kind of be moved to like the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Even Kanye, I think that, you know, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, Chris Brown are top 4 problematic people on this list. Yeah. And I mean, maybe y'all at home while you're listening are thinking about other people who maybe I don't really who's you know, they kind of, I blinked on them, but I mean, I don't know, Zelma, like, who
I know
on this list do you still support? Do you feel bad about it?
I was as we were preparing for this episode, I just realized how I'm kind of a hypocrite, because like in my playlist, in my music, I have R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, and Chris Brown. And I was even talking this out. I was like, well, why is it okay? And because Michael Jackson, I mean, that was like with children.
Yeah.
But like, even I was watching a movie and like Thriller came on, and I was like, you know, I actually like learned the Thriller dance. Like when Michael Jackson died, I remember where I was. I was in the cafeteria of a camp that I was working at. I remember I actually cried. Yeah. Like I cried when he died, and just feeling like really, 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 really like he was such an important part in my life. And then also remembering, though, the trial, remembering the documentaries, remember reading. And I think in my head, I framed it as he was abused as a child by, you know, physically by his manager, father. He thought he was a child. He, maybe in his head, he really was not trying to be sexual, but was acting as if he was 12. And then, like, I really, really had I worked really hard to make these reasons why it was okay. And so then that passed. I was just like, he's the king of pop. He's fine. He contributed so much. He underwent so much. He had so many different things happen in his life, where you, like, the marriages, the having these children with this random woman. I was just like, he had just so many issues. He wasn't well. Like, that's why all this happened. He wasn't well. Mm-hmm. And then, like, R. Kelly, for me, it was, well, I don't know, like, so his music is, that's when I started saying, like, his music is separate from the person. Like, you can't put the music and the person together. I know. I'm just telling you what I told myself as I was deciding whether to dismiss what people were saying or to really challenge it. With Chris Brown, it was the closest I came to saying, like, I think after the Rihanna incident with Chris Brown, it became really difficult for me, because I personally know people who were victims of domestic violence, so that was closer to home. And I felt that the way he reacted by saying, like, that's my past, that's not something I want to talk about, or continuing to fuck up, continuing to, like, you know, his alleged drug problems, like, it was easier for me to say, like. And so recently I haven't heard the last, like, whatever Chris Brown records. I think I just, you know, listened to old school Chris Brown. But I don't know. I feel like it's just not fair, though. It's just not fair to have made these reasons for why it's okay to support R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, and then still, you know, listen to Chris Brown songs and kind of be like, yeah, but Bill Cosby and Kanye are out. Yeah. It's like, why? I was asking myself, well, why is that okay? And I think it was easier for me to jump off the Bill Cosby train because in my family, we watched a lot of Spanish TV. I didn't really grow up watching the Cosbys, so he wasn't as integral part of my life as I think that it has been for for some other people. And so I think that that's why it was a little easier for me to kind of jump off the Bill Cosby train. And with the Kanye, I'm conflicted. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of like my reasoning, but they're not good reasons. Like it's at the end of I come to this episode still kind of being like, Zama, you're problematic. Like this is, and I know we did the podcast survey, and I was one of the 38% that was still, it was like a poll as to whether it was still like if it was still okay to support. I think it was in particular like Kanye, and I think we threw in a few others. And I voted honestly, and unfortunately I was one of the problematic percentage, I think. So I was just being completely honest, putting all my cards on the table and saying that this is why I'm wokish is because I don't really it's so much easier for me to talk about why I don't support politicians, why I don't support people who why I don't support policies, why I don't support parties, but it's so much harder when it's celebrities. And I think that one of the things that I struggle with is that I give people who aren't white more of a pass than I do white people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, with the poll, the question was, do you still support, listen to, or watch problematic celebrities? And 38% of people said yes, and 62% of people said no. And so I was like, well, shout out to those 62% of people because that is a lot of self-control.
Yeah, I was surprised at how many people.
Yeah, good for y'all. I guess, so Chris Brown, I haven't listened to probably since his first 2 albums, and I think that hasn't been super intentional. Like, that hasn't been because of what he did to Rihanna. It has been I felt like his music just kind of got really different and took a turn that I didn't really like or care for. So, yeah, it was kind of easy for me to stop listening to him. Yeah. In terms of R. Kelly, I don't think I've ever liked him, so that was easy too to not listen to him. Like I like 90s R. Kelly, but anything after, I was done with R. Kelly by the time they had Step in the Name of Love and all of that stuff. I wasn't into it. So that was easy too. Michael Jackson, oh, goodness. I haven't, nor do I see myself not listening to his music anymore. I just really don't. Just to be honest, I don't. As wrong as I think he was, as guilty as I think that he probably was, because there are a lot of people that I think use this cognitive dissonance to kind of oh, he couldn't have done that. Not Michael. No, he wouldn't have. No, he probably did.
No, I don't know. I still don't know if he did it. I know it's bad. It's horrible because I was telling someone and they're like, "So you think the kid lied?" And I was like,
"I don't think so. I really
maybe.
Don't think so."
Oh God, I'm terrible.
It's just come on now, really though. Who's gonna have an amusement park?
I know.
In their backyard.
Well, see, that my point was someone who's really mentally unstable.
Yes, he's mentally unstable. Yes, and I think that's probably what led him to do that to those children.
Man, you're probably right. I'm gonna have a hard time going to sleep tonight, but
I feel because I think that this is also good. I think that feeling conflicted about it, feeling guilty about it is good. I think that lets you know that you're human, and you have all the feels, because some people could care less, and I think that is a problem. So I think it's a problem to know that someone is doing something wrong and then be like, nah, whatever. Like, no, I think that there is something to separating the artist from the person, but I think that maybe in the past, but now, because of how close we are to these artists in terms of social media and all of these things, and how invested in these artists we are, a lot of folks, like, I don't personally message celebrities or, like, tweet them or whatever, comment on their pictures, but there are a lot of people that do. So for a lot of these folks, they communicate with these celebrities just as much or maybe more than they do their, like, actual friends. And so I think that it is now more difficult to draw that kind of line boldly than it was in the past. Like, maybe in the past it was like, we don't really know very much about these celebrities aside from what they tell us, or what's on the news. But yeah, I think that, the boundaries around celebrity are kind of becoming a little bit more, like, opaque or something like that. Yeah. Like, it's blurry. Like, people, their Instagram people are celebrity these days. Reality TV show folks are celebrity these days. So even defining what we mean by celebrity and who is or who isn't is hard. Yeah. So we don't, I guess, and I did see some people, when they pulled the Bill Cosby show, like, I felt bad. I felt bad not for him, but for his co-stars. For people who, were relying on that, on whatever royalties they were getting. Like, I love Felicia Rashad. I don't love all the other characters, but Felicia Rashad is, like, amazing. And so for this to potentially impact her income or whatever, it makes me sad, because these people, they didn't do anything to deserve
and
this.
Bill Cosby did a lot of good things.
Yeah, he did.
For not only for people, for black people, like, showing that black people could be lawyers and doctors. There are families where black people are like highly educated and middle class, and like, as a comedian,
like, that show is super
like, I mean, he's a trendsetter in like comedy. Like, I think that even if I think that you can't undo what, especially now that he's guilty and he's possibly facing jail time, like, he's he's never going to be the same. But I think that he just did so much good. It's just not fair, because there are a lot of white people that, like Marlon Brando or Woody Allen, that have done, like, really terrible things that I don't know if people jumped off. Woody Allen still gets, like, movies and awards, and people who have, I think, Casey Affleck, who was accused of sexual harassment, won an Oscar, and he beat Denzel Washington for it. And it's
Kobe, well, he's not white, but
oh yeah, and so I don't know, I feel like it's so hard, because whenever there's a person, whenever there's a non-white role model, it's just so hard when they fall. It's so hard, and it may be unfair
because
how much pressure.
There's so few.
Yeah, and so part of it may be unfair how much pressure there is on these non-white celebrities, that they represent. So they not only represent, like, Michael Jackson not only represents Michael Jackson, but he represents, like, a whole community. Like, Bill Cosby not only represents Bill Cosby, but represents not only a whole community, but a whole generation, like, a whole group of people growing up. And so it's hard for me to turn my back on people, but it's also unfair, because I'm one of those people that says, like, equality, like, people should be treated the same across the board. But in this instance, I am not treating people the same across the board, because I'm giving more leeway. Like, it took a really long time it takes a really long time for me to jump off a bandwagon. Like, even with Kanye, I'm not completely off. Yeah. Like, I'm still in there being like, come on, Kanye, come back, come back, come back. Whereas if a white person were to say slavery was a choice, like, no, delete everything off my iPad. Delete all the albums that I have. Unfollow everything. Like, you are no longer part of my life. But for Kanye, I still follow him because I'm waiting for him to say, like, my bad, guys, talked to T.I. again. and got set straight. Like, and I don't know if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm not gonna listen to his album. Yeah. Like, I've listened to every album Kanye. Like, his albums have, like, College Dropout. Like, his albums have been some of the most important parts of my life. There's a Kanye soundtrack to it. And so, and same with Michael Jackson. Like, my childhood was so much of Michael Jackson songs. And so it's hard. And I think that for me, my loyalty always lies with non-white. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I'm gonna really, really root for you, but you make it so hard. And, like, I don't want to, say too much about the gender thing, but it's a lot of men fucking up. Yeah. A lot of men fucking up constantly. And it's just, I really want to root for them, but they just make it so hard. And I don't have the answers. Yeah. Like, I don't know how I'm going to... I don't know, but it's just kind of like it. My mom, I really don't ever see myself not being a Michael Jackson fan.
Yeah, I think it really boils down to, like, how talented the person is. Yeah. Because I mean, and that just kind of, I just thought of that because with this whole Sabrina Claudio thing. So apparently she like tweeted about some mess about black women. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember the exact tweet, but. It's something that she did, like, when she was younger. But I think that because her music is, like, the genre that she's in is my favorite genre. Mm-hmm. And she just makes amazing music. And so it's so hard to stop listening to her. Yeah. So even though... what she said is horrible, even though I don't care about how long ago you said it, the fact that was something that you once felt, and not that much time has passed. And unless someone has entered your life that has convinced you otherwise, or unless you've done something to, like, self-educate or whatever, which she didn't say that she had. She just was like, oh, time has passed, I don't feel that way anymore. That's not really how, to me, that's not really how beliefs work. Yeah. But if she wants to say that she's changed her mind and all of that, fine. I think that what happens with a lot of celebrities is that celebrity and having fans and being dependent on those fans changes your mind. Doesn't necessarily mean that your heart is changed. I can't see through her chest to know what is on her heart, but I know that I have continued to listen to her music. Yeah. And I haven't felt anything about it. But then, like I was saying earlier with, like, Chris Brown, like, I stopped liking his music, so it wasn't difficult to stop listening. Same with R. Kelly. I think that Kanye's, Life of Pablo and College Dropout are my two favorite albums of his. And I think I was, like, messaging someone recently, and they were saying how they still listen to pre-domestic violence Chris Brown. And so I was thinking, if I listen to College Dropout, is that okay? Like, that, that was when Kanye was at the peak of his, like, consciousness, social and political consciousness. And at that time, if he had thoughts and beliefs that I agree with, is it okay to continue listening to that? Maybe not listen to this next album. But, so I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to negotiate those things. And, like, if it is an issue, because I know, like, for instance, there are a lot, I don't think that cheating is necessarily something that needs to be on the list of offenses for like, wokeness or whatever. But I know that there were a lot of Beyonce fans who, stopped listening to Jay-Z, and, like, that 444 album was incredible.
It was, yeah.
And so, I don't know. I know that there are people that did feel conflicted about that, because it's like, well, their loyalty lies with Beyonce. Yeah, they do enjoy Jay-Z's music, but their loyalty lies with Beyonce, and he did something that hurt her, and so it was like, well, I'm not going to listen to it. So, I guess what I was kind of thinking with this segment is, well, do we have to, like, are those things mutually exclusive? Does supporting these artists completely contradict being woke or being progressive? Or can there be some slippage between those two things? And who gets to decide? Like, I think it's ironic that we are very critical, even like say for instance with cultural appropriation, like I think it is easy to be critical of things that are clear, that are black and white to us. But when there's like some gray area for us, we are able to decide, yeah, this might not be wrong, or this might not be right, but I'm going to continue to do it. But for other people, for things that are like clearly to us problematic, it's like, no, don't do that, period.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's something that I kind of have a hard time with, is feeling like, yeah, maybe this might be a little bit hypocritical, but I can sleep with that hypocrisy. Like, I'm okay with that. But then why is it not okay for other people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it's hard, and I mean, that's exactly why I think you and I started this podcast anyway, because it's like, it's just, people are so complicated. Like, it's not, nothing is to me, nothing can ever be black and well, no, that's not true. There are some things where I'm like, that's definitely wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not everything is black and white. And it's just, it's so hard, because even with Bill Cosby, it's like, I mean, obviously TV didn't agree that, as being accused of sexual assault, Bill Cosby was okay to watch, because they just pulled his whole show from being on network. And so I don't know, and then a part of me is just like, feeling a type of way when like white people are critical of people in my community, or when they're critical of people that I'm like, but they and so I don't know. I think that,
because even like, say, one example that I just thought about is like, say rap music, right? Mm-hmm. So we say like my friends in college who were very much about gender equality and womanism and black feminism and all of this stuff, but still go to parties and shake your ass to music where they're calling you all these different names, being super degrading to women and stuff like that. But it's like, this is the music that I grew up on. Like, how do you I mean, how sad would that be to just reject all rap music because of feminism? I don't know. So it's like it's a fine line, but there's still a, I don't know. I don't have the answers.
No, I don't. And I think it's, people should be more honest. And that's why a part of me with the Kanye conversation, it's like, it's, for me, it's, I can't jump off Kanye right now. I just can't say.
His music is incredible.
And it's so hard. And it's so hard because it does conflict with so many of what arguments that I have made about other situations. And like, it's just, it's really hard. But I think that what is better for this conversation is like the honesty of people to say like, I don't know, like, I'm conflicted, I want to keep trying. And I think that the Kanye conversation is allowing people to say like, I don't know. And so for some people to say, no, he's fine. For other people to say, no, we should totally, I heard that he lost like millions of followers. And like, I mean, there's repercussion. Like he's making waves. Like, and people are like legitimately hurt. Like there are people online like crying for real, being like, Kanye, like, no, like I feel so connected to you. And I think that that's just what happens when you invest in these artists. They're to me, like, Kanye isn't just some guy who makes music. Like Kanye's music has been with me like through really hard times. Like I feel like I was there when his mom died. Like I was able to like I relate to him. Like he was able to relate to me. And so to be able to just turn away from that is so hard. I'm finding it to be so hard. It's so much easier to say things than to do it.
Yeah. I think too, it's like, I think that once you get really invested in someone's craft, you feel like you know how they think.
Yeah.
And so I think that for a lot of his fans, they felt like they knew how he thinks and how he would align himself socially and politically based on his music. Based on his entire catalog, you would think his entire catalog completely goes against this version of him.
Yeah.
Him saying that he doesn't know what the travel ban was, like, that was crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know what this is?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So I don't know if he's so I don't know. I think that maybe that's where a lot of the disappointment came from. It's like, whoa, I thought you thought this way, and now you're switching up. Like, that's unfair because I've gotten invested in this version of you.
Yeah. Which may also be like, are we expecting, expecting too much from these people? And two, are we not allowing that? Like, like I mentioned before, I used to be Republican and now I'm not. And so
imagine if you had fans.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like, if I were to go to my Facebook, I don't know if I shared, but like, talking about being fiscally responsible, talking about, I used to be anti-abortion, talking about like so many things. If I were a famous person, if I were someone could easily go dig through what I used to say and say, well, I'm disappointed in you, Zelma, that you used to think this way. And it's like, are celebrities not allowed to have moments? Are celebrities not allowed to mess up? Are celebrities not allowed to change and transition? Yeah. But maybe it's different when you're a role model, or maybe he shouldn't be a role model. Maybe I made him into a role model, that I made him into something more than he wanted to be. And maybe he really just wanted to make music, and I made him as a sort of like voice for me. And
well, he said that he embraces that.
Yeah.
Like he said, that he feels like people try to pigeonhole him as just a rapper, and he is more than that. Like he said he's always going to be for the Black community, but not just that. So, but then, he's saying that, and I think, what I think that a big part of his issue is, thinking back to actually some of the things that he said, is that he has been able to see Trump in isolation as just Trump, as his old friend and all of that, because he has not kept up with his politics.
Yeah, that's true.
So if he, like, say Ye is frozen in time and he has completely missed all of the BS that Trump has done over the last year and a half, then he might be able to still find love for him. But for those of us who have been keeping up with it, who have been living it, we can't just, ignore it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of why he's having this issue that he hasn't realized. Like, he, hopefully, after he learned about the travel ban, hopefully he then said, oh wow, okay, let me go and like educate myself and figure out what it is that's been going on for these last 2 years, because I could afford to ignore it.
Yeah.
And for my fans, they couldn't. And so now I need to see what it is that Trump's been up to, and if I am still going to continue to align myself with him. And then if he does all of that research, and then maybe he'll conclude that, like, oh dang, like, he's been on some F-boy stuff, like, I need to pull back, and then maybe you'll see the, like, I follow him on Twitter, so maybe you'll see that apology that you're waiting for. Because he needs to go and get, like, he needs to go and get educated. Like, I get you can afford not to care about this stuff, but you should still care. Yeah. Like, you see T.I. caring, or Snoop caring, or, all these people that have kind of been like, dang, Kanye, like, even so many celebrities are like, yo, this is, like, heartbreaking.
Yeah, like we started this segment with Van. Yeah. Saying, like, I liked when he was like, I'm not only appalled, but I'm hurt. Yeah. And it's like, I think when someone that we're invested in falls or falters or does something that we're like, what? It hurts. Yeah. And so when you're hurt, you don't react the same when you're emotionally invested as when you're just, objectively like, oh. With politicians, I I have no emotional investment in them. So if they say something fucked up, I'm gonna jump your wagon and say like, yeah, Al Franken was, although he was a Democrat, because some woman accused him and had proof that he sexually assaulted her. You're right, he shouldn't be a senator, and I'm all for him. But when it's someone that I'm emotionally invested in, like Kanye, to hear him say that, or to see that he's saying that slavery was a choice, and for him to say just all these things, it just hurts in a way that makes me want him to change, want him to take it back. Like, I don't just want to walk away, I want him I don't want this to be who he is becoming.
Yeah, or to define his legacy. You know, like this. That would be so sad.
Yeah, if this is how he ended. And a part of me just doesn't feel, I feel like he's gonna come around. Like, it's kind of nice to see like how the hip hop community is embracing, like, you know, Chance and like people and T.I. and Charlemagne,
Justin Bieber. I don't know if Justin Bieber's hip hop, but
like people like not reaching out to him, not just because they're like, oh yeah, like I want you to make a record so that we can collab, but kind of like Kanye, and I think T.I. said we can't, like, we don't want to lose Kanye. Yeah. Like, Kanye he was so important. He's just, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, and so I don't want to lose Kanye, and I don't want this to be how he leaves. I don't want him to just like, I don't want to say like, Kanye used to be cool. I want this to make him better. I want him to come back and see like why we're hurt, and I want him to understand, but I also don't know. Maybe this is a lesson for me too, and being like, when you set so much in one person and they do something that is against what you think, and they say things that are problematic, like, should you, like, I caught myself, like, I started retweets to him and then deleted so many of them, because I just like personally felt like, no, if he hears me, if I tell him like, you got me through so many rough times, if he understands that, then he'll change. And it's like, no, like, I
think that he might. I mean, I don't know if he would change solely based on that, but the fact that he hadn't even been considering how this was affecting his fans, is eye-opening. You know, like T.I. was saying that, you know, he told him that you're hurting your fans, and then he was like, wait, what?
Like you
really think that?
Like he really cared. He really cared if he hurt his fans.
And so I don't think that he recognized how much of an impact he had, and what role modeling means. You know, so you don't have the luxury of just saying every thought that pops into your mind. Yeah. You know, or tweeting every thought that pops into your mind. Like, certain things you gotta hold back. Certain things you have to think through a little bit. Like, is this truly how I feel? Do I have all the facts? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's an important, I think that even if now knowing that he didn't know all of what Trump has done, I still think that's an issue. Yeah. I think that's an issue to just assume that people are anti-Trump just because.
Yeah, just because maybe he's white, or just because it's like no,
he's actually done terrible things, and
to your fans.
I think that he should have done more research. I do think that that was important for him to do. I think that is, even though it was an oversight, I think that it's a problem. Like, I don't think that all is just forgiven just because you didn't know. Like, no, you should know. These are people whose circle you're in. Yeah. Like, this is not some distant, you know, person that you're just watching on television like us. Like, this is someone that you could have had when you met with him and had that conversation with him. You could have said, so next steps, what's going on, you know? Yeah. What's up with this wall? Like, does he know about the wall even? Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, hopefully, you know, this isn't the first episode where we've been talking about Kanye, but hopefully will be able to
maybe in the next episode.
Like
report that he got
married. Or a report where he's like, I mean, he has tweeted some things where he's like, okay, I don't 100% support his policies. People are saying like he's kind of, I think, being aware, and he's he's always been stubborn and he's arrogant, and that's why we love Kanye. And so I'm hopeful that he's going to understand it, and maybe seeing the reaction of his fans, of us, and how we're hurt, and we just don't want music from him. Like, we want him, like, as a person. Like, we care for, like, I care for Kanye. I want him to be happy. I don't want to call him unstable. I think he made a lot of good points about saying people are just saying I'm crazy. People are saying I had a breakdown. People are like, I think he has good points. We shouldn't just do that. We shouldn't just point the finger and say, well, he's crazy, let's walk away.
But I think it's really interesting that he has been calling himself a modern day Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
Because Howard Hughes, like, his ultimate the ultimate end to his career was mental illness. And so I don't think that Kanye is unaware of that. I think that could potentially be one of the reasons that he's aligning himself with him.
That's true, yeah. Because he said in the interview with Charlemagne that he was on medication, but he wasn't going to say which ones.
Yeah. So, I wonder if the medication has anything to do with this. But I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, we, would love feedback, what you guys have to think. I know, like, it was hard for me to admit to not only Ebony, but to whoever's listening that, like, I am in the minority of people who, like,
so am I.
Yeah, but I think it's part of being honest, and, you can only have real conversations if you're honest, and so I can put my cards on the table and say, yes, I'm woke, but I'm woke-ish, because there are still unresolved issues in my life that I don't exactly know the answers to, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about Kanye a year from now. Yeah.
And I'm in the same boat. I think I've always been in the same boat, because I have always been a fan of rap music. Yeah. And I think that to have the beliefs that I do about gender and gender equality, and then to also still, support folks who have said kind of just said and done outlandish things to women, is, qualifies me as woke-ish. Yeah, because I'm not all the way on the other side, and I applaud those of you who are. Those of you who have made, because those are sacrifices. Those of you who have made those sacrifices. Shout out to y'all. Yeah. So that concludes our What's Being Slept On segment. And our 5th episode. So thanks so much for listening.
Yes, if you have any shout outs, it doesn't have to be a person. It can be an organization. It could be a colleague. It could be, I'm waiting for someone I know to hear back about something, and then I want to shout her out because she's a Latina and doing good things, but I don't want to jinx it. So, but if you know anyone, it could be like a friend. It doesn't have to be someone famous. DM us on our IG at wokeishpodcast, or email us at woke.ishpodcast@gmail.com. Also follow us on Twitter at wokeishpod. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.